Hi, my name is Gary Dickelman. I'm facilitating this session, Why Open Education Resources Are Essential in Education Following the Pandemic. This is a virtual talk by Rory McGreal from Athabasca University, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. The abstract for the talk actually is rather long, so I think rather than me taking up the time to read the whole thing, I will let Rory give you a summary of the abstract and to present the talk. So you're on.
Hello, everyone. I'm talking about why OER are essential in education following the pandemic, and particularly following from the COVID-19 coronavirus, which has had a staggering impact on global education, forcing many people, many schools to close, and others, of course, to make the transition to online learning. And I'm proposing here that open educational resources, which are free examples like free textbooks online, etc. Oh, good, you've got my slides there now. Good.
So maybe we can share the slides for you, and when you want to turn
okay, well, if you can keep up with me, because I'll be moving through them very quickly. Right now, we should be on a picture of the shareholders in open education. And just to let you know that there are many UNESCO and International Council for Distance Education shareholders in open education. And, what happened there? And I want to say that as I'm a UNESCO chair in open education resources, and part of that is to meet the challenge of the 21st century. If you go forward with the slide, you'll see this. The challenge for the 21st century is the idea that there'll be about 100 million new students by 2025 capable of post-secondary education, but who will not be able to access it. And we believe that in the 21st century, our major challenge as educator is to educate all these learners. And the former Governor General of Canada put it this way, that education is a weapon of mass construction. And the pivot in COVID to online learning has shown us clearly that traditional education, that the idea that education is bounded by the classroom, that this idea that it's like the emperor has no clothes, it's been exposed. Traditional university quality control, if there was any, has always been put a PhD in the classroom. No teacher training necessary in most areas. People who criticize online learning, we refer to them as the educational Amish. That is, people who want us to continue to live in the 19th century when we're now living in the 21st century. And these are the proponents that only traditional education can work. Tom Russell years ago told us that of the no significant difference phenomenon. That is, that no matter what technology you use, there'll be no difference in the student outcomes. And he's put together examples of hundreds of studies showing this phenomenon. So really, we're going online. The pivot to online from COVID is not going to go backwards. Distance education has turned Cinderella into a princess. So let's get real. The world economy is online. The world economy is global. The world is mobile. Therefore, students should be online, global, and mobile. So online learning is here to stay. Now, open educational resources, as defined by UNESCO, are openly licensed, and there's a variety of open licenses, some more free than others. But they could be textbooks, they could be curriculum material, they could be videos, they could be podcasts. There's a wide range of possibilities. The key is that they are openly licensed for use by anyone. And I would expect that some of you have heard of the unit of measure called a twitch, which is equal to 2 jiffies or 200 milliseconds. Well, this is the term used for the amount of time it takes to move a joystick in one direction or another. And guess what? In 200 milliseconds, electrons on a wire can go 20,000 kilometers. There is no place on Earth further away than 20,000 kilometers. So what does that tell us? That God, in his or her infinite wisdom, has made the world perfect for playing video games. And there are many open education resource video games now available for learning. So we need to use the Creative Commons insignia on our courses to make them available to everyone. And the way forward is that all publicly funded content should be openly licensed. You can change OER, you can mix them, adapt them, extract them, localize them, translate them, reuse, repurpose them. You have many different things you can do with OER. Open means freedom and accessibility. They are mostly open, and one of the keys to using open education resources is rather than creating courses, we can assemble courses, like can be done with the IKEA sets. We can take one lesson from here, a mini lesson from there, a full lesson from somewhere else, a module from somewhere, put them together, and we can assemble courses. They can open access to everybody. They bring savings and efficiency. Speed and immediacy is greatly improved. Sharing is now possible without any constraints. Republishing can be done. You can do it in multiple channels. You can have multiple versions of the same concept. There's the wisdom of crowds, so as all different people using the same open education resources can adapt them and change them in multiple ways. They're good for informal and formal learning. They can bridge the gap between the two, and people who learn informally can possibly now get credited in a formal situation. We can construct open education resources. With open education resources, we can promote learner-generated content. We can partner with different people without problems of copyright. Mass participation is possible. Self-production and publishing is possible. Individualization, where no one-size-fits-all textbook is needed, we can individualize our courses. Online collaborations, especially if they're between different copyright jurisdictions, open education resources are essential in promoting online collaborations. We can archive, we can provide a web-based, viewable, reusable record of quality educational materials. International collaborations, again, OER are essential. OER can be used for blended learning, huge benefits for OER and blended learning. Or we can take another approaches to OER implementation. We can create open education resources, we can assemble them, or we can use them off the peg and take a whole full course and take a whole full course or even a program, all open educational resources. We can have a full bundle. And more of this information is available on the OER Knowledge Cloud. Just type in one word, OER Knowledge Cloud, on the internet, and you'll find over 2,800 research papers about open educational resources. But why is the really important? Why do we really need open educational resources? And I mentioned two major reasons: digital rights management and digital licenses, although I prefer the term digital restrictions management. Digital rights management or digital restrictions management is a lock that is put on content by commercial content providers, providers of educational content. They make your material defective by design. They put in blocks into the content to stop you from doing what you want to do with the content. Digital rights management software needs deep permissions into the operating system, and it can stop normal operating system functions. Digital rights management stops you. You can't copy and paste. You can't text to speech. You cannot format change. You cannot move material. You cannot print it out. You cannot move it geographically. You cannot use it after an expiry date. And unlike a textbook, you can't resell it once you've used the content that is under digital rights management. But I would suggest that our device is our property, and that digital rights management restricts our freedom from using our devices in the way we want to. And ask this question: can we not own and control our own property? But we're innocent. They do that. They put this locks onto our content, even if we've done anything or done nothing at all. Cory Doctorow put it this way: there's no theory of capitalism that says that my private property should be regulated by the state because there's a copyrighted work inside of it. Many of us have seen this slide where the uploader has not made this video available in your country. And not so much in the US, but every other country has experienced this. And of course, tried to actually destroy devices if they do not use copyrighted content the way the owners want it to be used. So who's really losing? Any obstacle that makes a record harder to listen to is bad news for the artists that made it. But that's what they're doing, not just with records, etc., but they're putting digital rights management in every type of content, especially in educational content. Now, these digital rights management is reinforced, and this is even more dangerous than the actual software, because the software can be broken. But they bring in digital licenses. And in the license, they say that owners have no liability for the product, even if it doesn't work. The license says they can invade your computer without permission, that they can collect and use your personal data, and not just the data regarding their application, any data on your computer, and that the user has a privilege to use the product and not own it. You're prohibited even to show your content to others, and you must accept that you have no rights. When you click on that I agree button, that is what you're agreeing to. And of course, they say we're going to own all of it, whether you like it or not. Deal with it. And the World Economic Forum recently told us that by 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And as an example of a license, here's a Microsoft license. where they can inspect your home, come into your home, announced or unannounced, and audit your computer. And you've agreed to that by clicking on the I agree. And of course, this shows that in prison, what are you in for? Because you're being put in jail because they showed their wife a page from their ebook. So what does that mean for OER? Well, and open textbooks is this, that we must stay away from commercially produced educational content. Avoid it like the plague. Leave commercial content to Britney Spears and the big musicians and the novelists, etc. But for educational publishing, we need open textbooks, and these are essential, especially for e-learning implementations. And I bring this question up now. Do you own what you pay for? A very interesting concept has come up to us, is that vendors can control how, when, where, and with what specific brands of technological assistance audiences can access content. They brought a new concept into the world. You buy, you don't get. Do you remember the world we used to live in, where if you bought something, you got it? That world no longer exists. Now you buy it, but you don't get it. It's not yours. We're in the post-ownership society. As Audrey Waters tells us, we all just share and rent on the powerful platforms of Silicon Valley billionaires. This is far from a satisfactory alternative. And Cory Doctorow says that it's a return to feudalism, where the lords owned everything, the serfs owned nothing. Now it's the big oligarchical companies that own everything, and people own nothing. And this is not just about in educational publishing, but it's in all aspects of our life now. You may own the physical car, but you do not own the software which the car works with. Excuse me. The car cannot work without the software. You do not own the software. And this applies to heart pumps. It applies to voting machines. It applies to tractors, farmers' tractors. It applies to everything. You do not own the software. You only own the device. And without the software, the device does not work. Somehow, the notion of actually owning the things you buy has become revolutionary. If you bought it, you should own it. It's as simple as that. I'll finish off now with a few statements that openness is the skeleton key that unlocks every attempt at vendor control and lock-in. We can thank David Wiley for that observation. But remember that everything you know is wrong, and that every day computers are making people easier to use. And the Royal Society of the United Kingdom, the oldest scientific society in the world, tells us that the restriction of the commons by patents, copyright, and databases is not in the interests of society and unduly hampers scientific endeavor. And the previous Pope Benedict XVI, he told us that on the part of rich countries, there is excessive zeal for protecting knowledge through an unduly rigid assertion of the right to intellectual property. What does that tell us? That we who support open education, open educational resources, that God is on our side. And not only God, but also science is on our side. Thank you very much for your attention. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here today. Thank you.
Hi. This is Gary, and thank you. That was an outstanding presentation. Um, the one concern that I would have about all of the open, um, access in education to things and the ability to put things together from to repurpose and reuse and so forth, is that there's a really real lag in technology behind doing that. Um, in online learning, there's been SCORM and XAPI and things like that that have been outstanding for interoperability, but not necessarily for reuse and so forth. So, what I'm thinking about is a chunk of knowledge or a module or something like that. That's for some specific purpose, and without the right without the right call it metadata or whatever, it's possible to put things together that are really disparate, that don't really match each other. And if we're leaving that up to people to do self-education around that, it kind of needs that structure around it. So what it really boils down to, I think, is the incentives for doing this, quote, correctly, right? And if you take the monetary part, the capitalism out of it, then how do we create incentives for creating the technology with all the right metadata, with all the right things that are that allow us to snap things together like that, as opposed to really poor quality. Collaboration and incentive is really what I'm concerned about. And comments on that?
Yeah, good point. Very important, actually. The first point I'd like to make is we're not talking about taking the money out of the equation. There's a huge amount of money. In fact, educational publishing is the most profitable part of the entire public publishing empires. Their profit margins, I think last year up to 30, nearly 40%, higher than Google, higher than Microsoft, a huge profit margin. So we are giving these publishing companies, these commercial companies, a huge amount of money. And what we would propose, as have librarians as far as academic research is concerned, and libraries in the United States have proposed, is that we start moving the money we give to them onto supporting open education initiatives. And it's my belief that no more than 1/10 of the money that we give to the commercial publishers every year is needed. That would be a huge amount of money available for open educational resources, adaptation, and sharing. Huge. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars here internationally, and even in the United States, we're talking huge numbers of dollars. So I'm not talking about taking the money out of it. I'm saying let's use our money wisely and get out of this ridiculous gift that we're giving to these publishers. And these publishers are monopolists. I mean, it's very few companies that we're talking about here that dominate the market in English in any case.
Well, that certainly answers the question about incentives and so forth. And it really underscores as well, what the problem is with the current sort of capitalist system that protects all of that stuff.
Sorry.
Learning.
Could I just stop there, because it isn't a capitalist system. I believe in capitalism. We need a capitalist system. What we have is an oligarchy where monopoly companies are controlling just about everything. We're beyond the stage of capitalism. We're into an economy that is controlled by a very small group of companies.
Yeah. the
So
whole
I want us to go back to capitalism.
capitalism. Yeah, I get, yeah, laissez-faire capitalism rather than what we're calling capitalism today. I get you. Yeah. Thank you for the correction. Does anybody else here have questions or comments? None here in the room. Do you have any there's none in the queue, so let me thank you very much for the talk. This has been terrific. And I gave a talk a little bit earlier, and this dovetails so nicely with some of the things that I was talking about. So thank you very much.
That's great. How many are in the room?
Oh, there's only a small number in this room right
Okay.
now, but I think you have a lot online listening to the talk. So, the concurrent sessions going on here.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
And thank you so much for the talk. Appreciate it.